On this day, 1987, Luis Valdez' terrific biopic La Bamba opens in theaters and rolls up more than 9 times its production cost.
Columbia Pictures presents La Bamba. The legend of Ritchie Valens, a true story. La Bamba.
And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to episode 254 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Thursday morning with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Yet another, what I refer to as a Gen X standard. Yet another Gen X standard celebrates anniversary, birthday. I don't know what you would like to say when a movie is released on a certain day. I just say, on this day, 1987. Is it the 37th anniversary? 37th birthday? I don't care. Whatever you want to call it, fine by me. But 37 years ago, Luis Valdez' fantastic rock and roll biographical film, La Bamba, opened in theaters. And when we look at these sorts of musical biopics, many of them are quite good. Ray with Jamie Foxx, terrific. Walk the Line, Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, also terrific. Many people enjoyed the Elton John film, Rocket Man, from a number of years ago. The Freddie Mercury, Bohemian Rhapsody got a lot of really good reviews, although it was somewhat controversial because of the filmmaker. The Buddy Holly story with Gary Busey from the 70s is fantastic. So there are a lot of great movies in this ballpark, and I know I've left a lot out. Chadwick Boseman was in one. Was it the James Brown film? I know Lawrence Tate did one in the late 90s. They're just a significant number of terrific biographical films about musical stars, some of whom died young. The Doors, Jim Morrison, Oliver Stone, the movie that Val Kilmer could have won an Oscar for and somehow didn't get nominated. The list is not endless, but it is a significant list of quality films from great filmmakers with terrific actors and actresses in primary principal roles. Some movies are closer to the truth than others. Sometimes you kind of stray from reality. But the movie La Bamba, released July 24, 1987, is reasonably close to how it really went down. Oh, Selena, Jennifer Lopez, another one, somebody who was cut down so young and so tragically. But when I think of La Bamba, I do, as many of us Gen Xers know, remember that it was on HBO and Cinemax all the time. As was Cocoon, because Cocoon was rated PG, La Bamba was rated PG. They could run it 24/7 on either of those networks if they chose. I must have watched La Bamba 20 times. When you didn't have streaming, you watched whatever was on TV, or if you wanted to roll out a VHS tape, you could do that. But I watched La Bamba over and over and over. In part because at whatever time it was that it was airing on TV, there wasn't anything better on. But I really love the music and the performances. And I could do an episode on, or in the most underrated performances series, on Lou Diamond Phillips, who I say is spectacular as Ritchie Valens. He plays him with such confidence and such energy. You feel the passion that he has for his music. You feel the need that he has for his voice to be heard, to become successful, not for himself, for his family. His brother Bob, who they have a very sort of contentious relationship. The mom, Rosanna DeSoto, fantastic as the mother. And the even tragic aspects of Ritchie Valens' life before we meet him. As a 17-year-old who's just on the cusp of getting somewhere with his music, where his dad died young also, drank himself to death in a bar, just all bad. But he has the gift. He has incredible talent. And filmmaker Luis Valdez, when you're making this kind of movie, there are choices to make that the average film fan, somebody like I was as a kid watching this movie, there's stuff that goes on behind the scenes that filmmakers maybe spend months worrying about and pondering that the average person, it wouldn't even enter the thought process in the first place. So in this movie, you had Lou Diamond Phillips obviously lip syncing. But what the movie did, what he decided to do, you had a musical group, Los Lobos, doing their interpretations of Ritchie Valens' original songs. That's a little bit of a nervy way to go, that they didn't use Valens' original studio recordings. They went with another group entirely, and it works like magic. Los Lobos, the title track, they actually appear in the film and they sing a much slower version of La Bamba. It's kind of funny if you know that it's them. But their version of the title track is sensational. It is amazing. And no disrespect to Ritchie Valens' estate. When people think of it, because of the movie, it's the Los Lobos version of La Bamba that they think of. This movie does cover the kind of standard beats of this sort of film. The person before they're famous, the person as they get famous, and then perhaps the fallout of fame. A film like Walk the Line, and especially Ray, takes into account decades. This movie, because Ritchie Valens died so young and so tragically, along with Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper, they all died in the same plane crash, the timeline is narrow and things have to all happen very quickly and within this short time frame. So this isn't one of those movies where, in reality it took 12 years, but they kind of shortened it to 6 months. No. Timeline is pretty close. And cliche though it might be to say that Ritchie Valens was about to become an enormous star just as he died, it's true. We'll never know exactly how big a star Selena would have been, but it seems that she was also on the cusp of that kind of next level as somebody, in her case, like Ritchie Valens. Ritchie Valens, the joke was, his birth name is Ricardo Valens, but he didn't speak Spanish. There's a little bit of a cultural thing. And I'm sure there were people in the 80s that were like, ooh, that's kind of edgy that they went there. They could have sort of almost left that out. It's not that important. But just because somebody has a certain name doesn't mean they speak a certain language. I don't speak Hebrew. I can read it, but I don't speak it. I never learned how to speak it. And if you're in a situation where you don't need to learn a different language, I learned how to speak Espanol in school. 5 years, no habla. Didn't find it so easy to pick up that language. But in the world of this film, unlike, I should say, he doesn't speak Spanish. And the great Joe Pantoliano himself, who plays, essentially he's the producer who gets him to the next level. And he's terrific. And that was the same, Pantoliano had just finished shooting Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun with a very young Christian Bale and John Malkovich, and he turned around from that and played an entirely different role. Show how talented of a character actor Joey Pants is, because he really is. He plays this very friendly and sympathetic, a strong character of the record producer, Bob, I forgot his last name, who takes Ritchie Valens, Lou Diamond Phillips' character, under his wing and positions him for the big time. But at one point, when they first meet, he assumes that the kid doesn't speak English. And if he's singing in English, he's doing it phonetically, which is not that crazy. I remember in the 90s, there was a band called Jellyhead. They had a massive, enormous, runaway freight train of a hit song called Crush. I'm sorry. The name of the group was Crush. See, I get mixed up. The songs of the 90s, a lot of them run together. The name of the group was Crush. The song was Jellyhead. They did the song phonetically. They didn't speak a word of English. Bela Lugosi in the original Todd Browning Dracula from 1931. The movie is in English. Bela couldn't speak English. He did his lines phonetically. So the character of Bob in La Bamba, he thinks that maybe Ritchie Valens, or Ricardo Valenzuela as he's known, it's actually Bob who gives him the name Ritchie Valens, doesn't speak. And the way Lou Diamond Phillips goes, I don't speak Spanish. He says it in such a matter-of-fact way. It's like, bro, what are you, fucking stupid? I don't speak Spanish. I would say that all of the main performances in this film are top level. Elizabeth Pena, who I recently talked about during the Tim Robbins episode with Jacob's Ladder, was a wonderful actress. Wasn't very old when she died. I don't think she even made it to 60. She plays an interesting character where she seems to be a love interest for Ritchie, but that we don't really actually get to see them together. But then she goes for the brother. And as the brother, Bob, Esai Morales is electric. He's electric. And it's the kind of performance that there are certain people will be rubbed the wrong way because the character is presented as on the edge and somewhat over the line. Morales' performance is really amazing because you see him and he plays all of the notes of what an older brother, I think they're half brothers actually, but what an older brother who does love his younger sibling, but he's jealous as fuck of how talented he is. Even though the Bob, as presented in the movie, is a talented artist in his own right. He's a cartoonist. He's really good. But it's different. We all want to be more than we are. And even if Bob were to have a career as a cartoonist, he would still be jealous as hell of his kid brother, the musical sensation. So the film gives us a lot of moments of strife, moments of connection, reconnection, and bonding with the brothers. And it's the sort of thing I feel like if the movie were made today, they would focus less on that character. But I'm glad that they did what they did. I'm glad they gave Elizabeth Pena, her character, Rosie, room to grow. And they also don't shy away from the fact that Bob is not really a good guy. He may have moments where his heart is in the right place. He's not a good guy. And there's a scene that it's almost a moment that's played for laughs and really shouldn't be, if you ask me, where he and Rosie have basically started having sex. And he did kind of take her away from Ritchie, although Ritchie isn't as sore about it as he could be because he has his eye on Donna Ludlow, who is played really well by Danielle von Zernick, Danielle von Zernick is she appeared in a lot of movies in that era, and then she just kind of left the movie business. Then she came back. She's in Living in Oblivion, the famous Tom DeLillo independent film from the mid-90s, and now she's more of a producer. I don't think that she's acted in the last couple of decades. But she's very good because she is a believable love interest. She does not look like, she is a normal, she comes across like a real person, not like the sort of girlfriend of a big musical star. And Lou Diamond Phillips, with the hair, he has the kind of pompadour, which was, that's the real Ritchie Valens, had that kind of hairstyle. The two of them really look good together. And it doesn't ever feel like teen hormones on fleek. It feels like two people who really like one another. And I appreciate the fact that they went for the romance angle rather than just the hot and heavy makeout sessions in the car. Because there is something to be said for that. But the character of Bob, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, at a certain point in the film, Rosie tells him that she's pregnant. Now, we haven't seen any contraception. We don't get into any of that in this film. We don't know what their sex life is like, if anything. We know that she's not happy because he kind of treats her like crap. He drinks too much. It's not a good scenario. But when she says she's pregnant, he doesn't have a reaction. He doesn't really react at all. And she's almost the audience, she goes, "Aren't you going to say something?" And Esai Morales has this faraway look in his eyes, And it's a moment that's so inappropriate, but somehow it's still gold. I'm almost ashamed of myself that this is something that I remember. What's there to say? It's not my first or my last. He's kind of like he's taunting her. It's not my first or my last? What? Needless to say, they start fighting after that, and in Ritchie, it's a mess. In every scene where he performs, and there's a wonderful extended sequence where Ritchie Valens, and this is based on fact, goes on tour like a big doo-wop type show. An American Bandstand, but it's not American Bandstand, but the kind of thing where he would get national exposure. And he gets to perform with, and this again is based on truth, Eddie Cochran. And as a Massapequa native, Massapequa, New York, the home of Seinfeld, the Baldwin brothers, Joey Buttafuoco, a lot of famous and infamous people, but it's also the home of a non-infamous famous person, a fantastic musician named Brian Setzer. Brian Setzer with Jim McDowell, who went by Slim Jim Phantom, he was a drummer. They formed the Stray Cats in the late 1970s. And by the early 1980s, the Stray Cats were a thing. They were a pretty significant band. And they had a different sound and a different style called rockabilly. And Brian Setzer is a very interesting looking guy. He's an attractive man, but again, he doesn't look like a normal big star would look. Brian Setzer was cast as Eddie Cochran in La Bamba. And I remember seeing a featurette on the film and just thinking, man, this is amazing. This guy basically grew up 3 blocks away from where my parents, he's a lot older than me, but 3 blocks away from the house where I grew up. Slim Jim Phantom, Jim McDowell, the drummer, he grew up diagonally across the street. My dad used to complain about the kid banging the drums. Somebody tell this kid it's fucking 2, he didn't say fucking, it's 2 a.m., this kid is banging the drums over there. Do I go to their house? What do I do? Brian Setzer is really good as Eddie Cochran, kind of looked like the real Eddie Cochran, hence why they cast him. But I believe he was able to, like, he did his stuff. I think Brian Setzer actually did the music, and they did not use the Eddie Cochran tracks. I think Brian Setzer got to record, and it's his version of, I forget which song it was. Damn, that sucks. I can't remember. You know what? I'm going to look that up because it's important enough to the movie. Brian Setzer, Eddie Cochran. Here we go. You see, and I thought it was Cochran with an E. Summertime Blues. See, a famous, iconic song. And Brian Setzer fucking crushes it. You could say that he upstages the other musical performers in that sequence, including Ritchie Valens. But the way that Lou Diamond Phillips, I understand he's only lip syncing, but the drive and the energy that he brings to that scene in particular, he just sells it. It is such a great performance. It's a nuanced performance because there are things that, like, we see him burning and striving to achieve. And he doesn't need to beat us over the head with it. We know where his bread is buttered. We know why he wants to do what he wants to do. And it is sad that the real Ritchie Valens apparently was somebody who had premonitions of an early death. And he was always afraid to fly. He was afraid to fly. He was convinced he was going to die in a plane crash. And it's so sad to think that that's how he went. And he only ended up on the plane. It was just what seemed to be good luck was actually terrible luck. It was coal in the stocking. They were on a bus. The heater on the bus broke down. They were in the Midwest Minnesota, wherever they are. They're freezing to death on the bus, and they were able to charter a plane. And in the world of the movie, it's Buddy Holly who talks Ritchie into going along on the plane. You can freeze your ass on the bus. And he says, the sky belongs to the stars. There's a lot of different meanings to that line. The sky belongs to the stars. I don't think that La Bamba is. I don't think that it's streaming free on any platforms right now. It is readily available for a couple of bucks on Amazon Prime and Apple, and it's the kind of movie that if you get good old fashioned TV, it's constantly airing. I haven't gotten regular TV in a couple of years, so I don't really keep up with when I see articles talking about such and such a movie is on a regular network or even network sitcoms. It's just like I'm so out of the loop as far as that goes that it just seems absurd. It's like, oh, such and such a movie is going to be on at 8 on. It's going to be on at 8. You can click a couple of buttons and stream it right now. What do you mean it's going to be on at 8? La Bamba is a great movie. Is it as good as Walk the Line or Ray? It's just different. And this is another thing where you have, and movies like that did it very well, when you have films where there was enough of a budget to at least try to recreate a time period, for someone like me who's a historian first, I really appreciate that. And I thought that Walk the Line did a great job of recreating the era of Johnny Cash, of June Carter Cash, of Johnny's first wife, all of that. And Ray also was marvelous in the way it made you feel that you were, okay, now we're in 1958, and now we're in 65. And again, they didn't beat you over the head with it by throwing cultural markers and touchstones at you, because it's not supposed to be a Forrest Gump type of a story. But in La Bamba, it feels like they're back in the time period. And this is the advantage, in my opinion, of a period piece, is because if period pieces are done right, if there is an attempt made with the clothing, with the cars, redressing the streets, making sure the hairstyles are not from 1987, that kind of thing, films can be timeless. And I believe that La Bamba, similar to Ray, similar to Walk the Line, those are both much broader stories because their protagonists lived long lives and had decades worth of highs and lows rather than just one summer of love, summer of success, and not long after, gone. Some of you would not have seen this movie. If you're under 35, it's less likely that you have seen it. It's extremely unlikely that young boomers and Gen Xers who consider themselves movie fans haven't seen it for the reasons I mentioned, that it was always on TV. Young people can't understand the struggle of being presented with the same movies on endless repeat 3 or 4 times every week on Cinemax, then it's on HBO, then the Movie Channel and Showtime maybe borrow it for a few minutes so we can catch it on there. It is an entirely different TV viewing universe. I didn't go to the movies. I'm trying to think if I went to see any movies in 1987. I was 13 during the summer of 87, and I know a lot of big movies from that year. It was a terrific year for movies. Michael Douglas had the 2 big films with Fatal Attraction and Wall Street. The Lost Boys, I think we're going to be doing a Lost Boys episode because the 37th anniversary of that one is coming up really soon. The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton, I think was released the same day as The Lost Boys. Spielberg's Empire of the Sun was an awards kind of contender towards the end of the year. A great year for movies. And La Bamba is a high quality film. And I mean, I certainly would rate it an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. If you ask me what is the best musical biography kind of film, I think I'm going to say Walk the Line. I preferred Walk the Line to Ray. Ray, there were certain things, and this has not to take away from Jamie Foxx's performance. Jamie's incredible. But Ray, to me, there were certain pieces of the film that I didn't get, that there were things that took place that didn't make sense to me. That that Ray Charles was able to draw conclusions as far as who was stealing money from him, and it didn't click. It didn't make sense to me that he was able to figure it out, because what we were presented, I just didn't buy it. Walk the Line, I think, is the gold standard for this sort of film. Not surprisingly, both Joaquin and Reese, I think they both walked away with Oscars. And man, were they good. Did they sell it? Did Joaquin bring it in that film? Just incredible performance. And I absolutely adore what Reese did as June Carter Cash. It's hard to believe that movie's 18 years old, but hey, it's hard to believe that Ray is 20 years old. 20 years old, it's a 2004 film. That is absolutely crazy to ponder. Well, for somebody like me. La Bamba is 37 years old. And any film from 1987, anybody who was around is at least 37 years old. Mind-blowing. Because I can remember people arguing and debating which movie they were going to see. Tennis Camp. Glen Cove Tennis Center. 1987. People arguing, well, I'm going to go see La Bamba. I haven't seen it yet, heard it's great. I'm going to see The Lost Boys. That looks so cool. Okay. I can still hear it ringing. Somehow that made an impression on me. Esai Morales, I should point out, for those who don't know, he plays who appears to be the big bad in Mission Impossible Part 1, Dead Reckoning Part 1, the one that came out summer of 2023. That's the actor who plays Bob, the brother, in La Bamba. He has aged very, very gracefully. And he had another movie with a pretty reasonably large-sized role, also in 1987, called The Principal. Not that good. It was with Jim Belushi and the late Louis Gossett Jr., among others. Not a great movie. Ray Don Chong was in that too. It's okay. But it shows, even at a very young age, that Esai Morales was capable of throwing very distinctive, unique characters and playing them where he doesn't look like the same actor reading the same lines. He's putting a different spin on expectation. And his performance as Bob in this movie, in its way, is just as powerful and strong as Lou Diamond Phillips' vastly underrated turn as Ricardo Valenzuela, a.k.a. Ritchie Valens, a man who was destined to be a superstar, but fate cut him short. La Bamba, directed by Luis Valdez, released on this day, 1987, starring Lou Diamond Phillips, Esai Morales, Elizabeth Pena, Rosanna DeSoto, and Danielle Von Zernick. This has been episode 254 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Thursday morning here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, share, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.